On January the 20th of 2017, actress Rose McGowan left behind her wallet following a flight to Washington Dulles International Airport. In June of 2018, the 44-year-old was indicted in Loudoun County, Virginia for felony cocaine possession. It emerged that the wallet she'd left behind contained an unspecified amount of the drug. McGowan adamantly maintained that the cocaine wasn't hers and that it must have been planted in her wallet while she went to the bathroom on the plane. At the time, McGowan, who was best known for movies like Planet Terror and the TV show Charmed, was among the first women to speak out against movie producer Harvey Weinstein, which was a milestone in the Me Too movement. She publicly stated that Weinstein had abused her in 1997 at the Sundance Film Festival. She accused him of assault at the time but accepted a $100,000 settlement for her silence on the matter. McGowan eventually went public after learning that her agreement with Weinstein didn't have a non-disclosure element. As one of Weinstein's most prominent accusers, McGowan reported that she'd become a target. The disgraced movie producer was reported to have hired private investigators to trail those speaking out against him in an attempt to prove that he was the target of a smear campaign. McGowan claimed that it was Weinstein's agents who planted the cocaine in her wallet in an attempt to discredit her. There was little evidence, however, to support that version of events. In light of her drug charge, McGowan tweeted out, "None of the monsters have been cuffed. Guess who has? #Rosemary." The actress eventually pleaded no contest to misdemeanor possession of a controlled substance. She was given a $2,500 fine and a 12-month suspended jail sentence. Number 10. Vanessa Macias. In October of 2012, a former reality show contestant was arrested for DWI by the San Antonio Police Department in Texas. 32-year-old Vanessa Macias, who had finished 4th alongside boyfriend Ralph Kelly on the 20th season of The Amazing Race. She was ordered to pull over after she'd been observed driving erratically. During the interaction that followed, officers observed that she exhibited signs of alcohol intoxication, including slurred speech and bloodshot and glassy eyes. Macias was taken into custody after refusing to step out of her vehicle and submit to a field sobriety test. She later admitted that she'd had 3 mixed drinks that night and was charged with misdemeanor DWI. Macias attracted online attention following the incident due to her mugshot. It showed her wide-eyed in a look that E! News described as a deer in headlights portrait. Number 9. Samira, Morel and Noel Brown. In July of 2021, a hip-hop duo from Detroit, Michigan was charged with aggravated identity theft, false claims and conspiracy. Samira, Morel and Noel Brown, Raptors' juices wild, and their moderately successful careers were paralleled by them running a multi-million-dollar tax scheme. Between 2013 and 2022, Morel and Brown worked with other accomplices to file 122 false income tax returns to the Internal Revenue Service and Minnesota, Georgia, Maryland, Arizona, Connecticut, and Colorado state treasuries. They sought nearly $14 million from the IRS and $15 million from the states. Morel expressed an intention of pleading guilty following her arrest, but then fled the state and resumed her fraudulent activity before she was apprehended in December of 2022. She was identified as the mastermind of the operation, and during the time frame that the criminal activity took place, she controlled dozens of bank accounts and filed returns using the identities of other people and entities. Charles Miller, acting special agent in charge of IRS Criminal Investigation Detroit Field Office, told the media that Morel committed an astonishing amount of fraud against state and federal agencies, proving herself incorrigible in continuing the scams after her initial arrest. She eventually pleaded to mail fraud, wire fraud, and committing an offense while on bond. In February of 2023, Morel was sentenced to 4.5 years behind bars and 3 years on supervised release. She was determined to have stolen $8.5 million, which she was ordered to restore. Brown had also admitted defrauding the government in September of 2022, but her punishment remained unclear. Number 8. Larissa dos Santos Lima. 90 Days Fiancé stars Larissa dos Santos Lima and her husband, Colt Johnson, were involved in a violent argument at their Las Vegas home in January of 2019. It was reportedly sparked by Johnson paying to watch a video on the ManyVids adult platform, and Lima finding an email with the receipt. The couple, who'd gotten married in June of 2018, both exhibited facial injuries. In a series of photos and videos posted to her Instagram, Lima revealed a bloody gash on her cheek and scratches on her face. She claimed that Johnson had attacked her before calling the cops on her. She asked for help from her followers in finding an attorney, saying that her husband was trying to get her deported. "I just scratched him because he was hurting me," Lima said, and photos also showed bloody cuts on her fingers, as well as scratches all over her side and back. In one of the videos purported to have been taken during the attack, Johnson calmly spoke to his wife from the bathroom doorway. He repeatedly told the 32-year-old, "Larissa, stop, I'm tired," as she appeared to be distressed. Lima also wrote to 90 Days blogger John Yates, who posted photos of their conversation and of her injuries to his own Instagram. Yates wrote that he wanted to maintain the spirit of fairness and also uploaded a photo of Johnson with a bloodied mouth. Law enforcement investigated the incident and concluded that only Johnson's injuries were genuine and that Lima's had likely been self-inflicted in an attempt to frame her husband for violence. One piece of evidence in that regard was that Johnson had a compulsive habit of chewing his nails and therefore wouldn't have been able to scratch his wife. Lima was arrested for domestic battery, and in May of 2019, she was ordered to serve 48 community service hours as well as pay a $345 fine. Months after the altercation, the couple reached an amicable settlement and got divorced. Number 7. Thomas John Gieri. More than 30 years after starring in the movie The Sandlot, 42-year-old Thomas John Gieri was arrested following a dispute with his neighbor in Horry County, South Carolina. The incident in question happened in early June of 2024, when police responded to a reported disturbance in Gieri's neighborhood. The former actor's neighbor accused Gieri of smashing the windshield of his Jeep and provided surveillance footage to back up the claims. In the video, a man resembling Gieri could be seen hurling a 35-pound dumbbell at the windshield. He then approached the front door and rang the doorbell while brandishing a knife. Gieri maintained a calm demeanor in front of the police, apologizing to the neighbor for his actions and promising to cover the costs of the repairs. The confrontation between the two neighbors reportedly lasted for 2 hours, during which time 3 911 calls were made. Authorities have yet to reveal the circumstances that led up to the fiasco. Gieri was arrested on suspicion of assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and malicious injury to personal property. A few weeks after his arrest, he pleaded guilty to the charges and was fined $747. This wasn't the first time Gieri's name has graced news headlines following an arrest. In 2013, Gieri was accused of headbutting an officer at Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston after he was told that he was too drunk to fly. According to news reports, a police sergeant gave Gieri the chance to avoid an arrest by going to a local sobering center, which keeps its doors open to walk-ins 24/7. But the irate traveler refused to calm down and reportedly threatened the sergeant, resulting in his arrest on a felony charge of assaulting a public servant. He bonded out of custody after his first court hearing, but it's unclear whether he was convicted of the charge. Number 6. William Bretherton. Officers from the Bossier City Police Department in Louisiana went to a hotel on the Louisiana boardwalk in late April of 2012 after someone had called 911 and hung up. The police followed up on the report, and it led them to a room where they found William Bretherton, star of the A&E show Billy the Exterminator, and his wife, Mary. The couple were in possession of what appeared to be synthetic marijuana. They were released, but after testing confirmed the substance, warrants were issued for their arrest on charges of possession of a controlled dangerous substance and possession of drug paraphernalia. The Brethertons surrendered to the authorities on June the 1st, and the following year they pleaded guilty to drug possession. William was given a 60-day jail sentence, which he wouldn't have to serve provided he paid a $500 fine, completed 4 8-hour days of community service, underwent substance abuse evaluation, and subjected to random drug testing. Number 5. Bryce Shear Gray. Actor Bryce Shear Gray, best known for portraying Hakeem Lyon on the TV show Empire, was taken into custody following a 911 call out of Goodyear, Arizona. In mid-July of 2020, A woman who was identified as Gray's wife reported that she'd been brutally attacked by the actor. According to the authorities, she had numerous visible injuries on her body and had been strangled by Gray to the point of losing consciousness. The actor was believed to have been inebriated at the time of the assault. When the authorities went to arrest Gray, he initially refused to come out of his residence, and a standoff with a SWAT team ensued. Gray was ultimately apprehended without incident. In February of 2021, roughly 7 months after his arrest, he entered a guilty plea to the charge of aggravated assault. Other charges, including kidnapping and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, were dropped. As a part of the plea deal, Gray was jailed for 10 days and given 3 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the victim and attend a domestic violence offender treatment program. Number 4. Kenjuan McDaniel. Nevada rapper Kenjuan McDaniel was arrested by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police on August the 29th of 2023 on a charge of open murder with a deadly weapon after reportedly confessing to a killing in his lyrics. Kenjuan McDaniel, who performed as the biggest Fin 4800, was already considered a person of interest in the fatal shooting of Randall Wallace, which occurred on September the 18th of 2021. The rapper was linked to a vehicle that matched the description of one spotted at the scene. McDaniel uploaded the video of his song Fadey Free to YouTube in mid-July, and it soon caught the attention of a detective working on the Wallace shooting. McDaniel, who began the song rapping, "I'm the reason why you're dead," allegedly provided details of the shooting that hadn't been released to the general public and would have only been known to the killer. According to the arrest warrant, McDaniel not only confessed to the killing in his song but also validated the results of the investigation. In one of his incriminatory lyrics, he said, "Parked the car double back on feet, the smartest way to slide. Drove in, double lock your man, make sure you get your bod." McDaniel was booked on a $1 million bond, and his case was ongoing as of the latest updates. Number 3. Kim Plath. Kim Plath, star of the TLC show Welcome to Plathville, was taken into custody in Wakulla County, Florida, after crashing her car while driving drunk. The reality show in which Plath starred followed the lives of a family of 11 in southeast Georgia. On June the 10th of 2021, law enforcement arrived at the scene of a single-car accident involving Plath. The woman had suffered minor injuries after flipping her car upside down in a water-filled ditch. She told officers at the scene that she had 2 12-ounce margaritas before getting behind the wheel. The accident occurred just months after Plath had announced a separation from Barry, her co-star and husband of 24 years. Plath was taken to the hospital, and she was initially only charged with careless driving. The authorities took a blood sample, and a few months later, the results indicated that Plath, who was in her late 40s, had had twice the legal limit of alcohol in her system at the time of the accident. A warrant was issued for her arrest in October of 2022, and she surrendered to the authorities. The mother of 8 was found guilty of DUI and subsequently given 9 months of probation and 50 hours of community service, in addition to being ordered to pay a $963 fine. Today's topic was requested by Exploring with Cam 2018 and Sneakers Lifestyle 87. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. PNB Rock. In January of 2019, a Philadelphia area rapper was arrested for selling drugs out of his home on Conefall Street in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Rakim Hashim Allen, professionally known as PNB Rock, achieved triple platinum certification with his 2016 song Selfish and collaborated with artists such as Wiz Khalifa, XXXTentacion, and Ed Sheeran. The authorities had started investigating him due to repeated complaints from his neighbors over loud parties and the smell of marijuana coming out of his home. When the police raided the residence, they found multiple pounds of marijuana, digital scales, drug packaging material, more than $33,000 in cash, and a stolen .40 caliber Glock handgun. Allen's girlfriend, Stephanie Sibon Huang, was also arrested and charged with drug possession, receiving stolen property, and criminal conspiracy. They were taken to the Bucks County Correctional Facility, and their bail was set at $500,000. Sibon Huang pleaded guilty to possession of a controlled substance in September of 2019 and was given 6 months of probation. In August of 2021, Allen entered an open guilty plea to 1 count of possession with intent to deliver and 1 count of receiving stolen property. He was sentenced to 36 months of probation on each count, to run concurrently, and also had to complete 100 hours of community service. His supervision was permitted to continue in California, where the rapper reallocated. On September the 12th of 2022, Allen was seen in a location tagged Instagram post while he was at Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles in South Los Angeles. Sibon Huang had reportedly shared an Instagram story of them having lunch. Sometime later, an armed suspect entered the restaurant, shot the rapper and robbed him. 30-year-old Allen was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Sibon Huang, who shared a child with the late rapper, would later credit him for saving her life by throwing her under a table when the gunman approached them. Several arrests were made in connection to the murder, including those of Freddie Trone and his unnamed teenage son. The latter was reported to have acted as the gunman, and after fatally shooting Allen, he ripped his jewelry from his body. Also arrested in connection to the case was Tremont Jones. Investigators believe that he'd alerted the robbers to Allen's location and not Sibon Huang's IG post. If these low-level celebs weren't shocking enough for you, then find out what happens when talent shows go wrong. If you haven't seen it yet, it's coming up right after number 1, so stay tuned. Number 1. Suki Hannah. Destiny Lynette Henderson, better known as Suki Hannah, rose to media attention in 2020 by appearing on the 3rd season of the VH1 reality series Love and Hip Hop Miami. The rapper, who went on to release popular songs on her own and alongside fellow rapper Sexy Red, was arrested in North Lauderdale, Florida. On April the 25th of 2024, she was charged with possession of ecstasy and codeine with intent to sell, manufacture, or deliver. 32-year-old Henderson flashed a grin in her booking photo, but no further information was made available regarding her arrest. Later in the month, she took to Instagram Live to vehemently deny having drugs on her, claiming that she didn't need to traffic illegal substances as she was already rich. Henderson said, "I don't sell no drugs. Like I said, I sell coochie," therein referencing a song of hers titled Selling Coochie. Number 8. J.D. Anderson. In January of 2022, a strongman on Britain's Got Talent required medical attention at the London Palladium following an act that involved him breaking ice with his head. J.D. Iceman Anderson was known for strongman feats that often involved him shattering objects with various parts of his body. A few years earlier, he'd established a Guinness World Record for smashing 88 ice blocks by simultaneously using his head and forearms. Prior to BGT, he'd auditioned for talent shows in Italy, France, Germany, and the US. During the 2022 audition, show judge Amanda Holden was filmed wincing as the ice blocks Anderson was breaking got progressively larger. The performance ended with him running head first into a giant ice wall. An onlooker described the aftermath by saying, "It soon became clear he was in pain and blood could be seen coming out of his head. The strongman was left with a bloodied face and had to be checked by the set's doctors. He wasn't expected to suffer long-term damage, but a concussion wasn't ruled out." Number 7. Katarina Kondina. Russian woman Katarina Kondina suffered a serious injury in 2015 while performing for Dancing, the country's version of the American So You Think You Can Dance series. 23-year-old Kondina auditioned in the southwestern city of Gelendzhik, and she was hoping to use the money from the competition to open a dance school in her town. The young woman, who also described herself as a model and fitness coach on her social media, was nearing the end of her solo dance. She then dropped into a sudden split and launched herself forwards with too much force. Kondina failed to brace properly and smashed her face into the floor. Even though she'd been seriously hurt, she continued the routine for roughly 30 seconds and finished it to the applause of the judges and the audience. Moments later, the extent of her injury was revealed as Kondina clutched her face and blood started pouring from her nose, which was suspected to have been broken in the impact. She was treated and bandaged backstage, but ended up having to be taken to the hospital. Number 6. Christy Cullum. In June of 2019, during an edition of NHS Got Talent, an English nurse was severely injured following a performance that involved a fire-breathing act. The talent show, held annually by the health organization, took place at the Theatre Royal in Winchester, Hampshire, in front of an audience of several hundred. Fire breather Christy Cullum, a woman in her mid-30s, accidentally set herself ablaze during her performance. She had flammable liquid in her mouth and was ready to spit it out onto the flaming sticks in her hands. However, a droplet reached her windpipe, causing Cullum to splutter the fuel involuntarily. Her mouth instantly caught fire, but she reacted quickly to avoid potentially lethal damage. Cullum knew that breathing in would have been devastating, so she spat the burning fuel onto her body and then used her arms to protect her mouth, nose, and eyes from the flames. She reached the side of the stage where she was doused with a fire extinguisher. Fortunately, she was able to receive help immediately as many medical professionals were in attendance. The talent show was cancelled in the aftermath. Cullum was rushed to a hospital where she was placed in an induced coma for 2 weeks. She survived after suffering extensive burns to her neck, chest, and arms. Her painful recovery included skin grafts and laser treatment, but she vowed to perform with fire again. Number 5. John Goodwin. A Welsh daredevil narrowly avoided death in October of 2021 after a failed stunt during rehearsals for America's Got Talent Extreme. 41-year-old escape artist Goodwin was familiar to fans of the talent show and its homologous British series through several death-defying acts. One of them saw Goodwin hanging upside down and doused in flammable liquid. He was then set ablaze and unshackled a straitjacket to activate a fire extinguisher suspended near his body. During the semi-finals of AGT in 2020, he hung from a zip line roughly 60 feet above the ground. Goodwin only used his teeth to cling to the harness, the ropes of which had been set on fire, giving him limited time to open a lock and escape his shackles. He successfully completed the stunt, much to the praise of the show's judges and fans. His 2021 stunt for AGT Extreme was intended as his most daring to date, but it went horribly wrong, as shown by the harrowing footage circulated in its aftermath. Goodwin was hanging upside down, high above the tarmac, at the Atlanta Motor Speedway in Hampton, Georgia. Simultaneously, on either side of the suspended stuntman, 2 cars were released and swinging on a collision course with each other. Goodwin was meant to undo his shackles and safely drop to an airbag below before the 2 vehicles made contact. Unfortunately, the timing had been miscalculated, and he was crushed between the cars, which erupted into a fireball upon impact. Worse still, as the escape artist plummeted 40 feet, he missed the cushion and landed on his head. The emergency services were called and Goodwin was airlifted to a hospital where he underwent urgent surgery. Remarkably, he survived, and it subsequently emerged that he'd suffered cuts, burns, and multiple broken bones. Later in October, Goodwin posted a photo to his Instagram that revealed injuries to his face. He thanked those who'd supported him and assured his followers that he'd recover, writing, "I have a lot left to do in this world." AGT Extreme paused production in the incident's wake. Number 4. Shakara Mclen. In 2011, a talent show rivalry resulted in a vicious attack perpetrated by a group of teenagers in Brooklyn, New York City. It was centered on a high school level competition inspired by the Glee TV series, in which Shakara Mclen, a gifted singer, was among the favorites. It was reported that, fueled by jealousy, other students plotted to attack Mclen so that she couldn't take part in the show. She'd received an ominous message on Facebook the day before she was ambushed outside the home of her voice coach. Mclen had been warned that others were going to hurt her so that she couldn't sing anymore. Aaliyah Smith, later identified as the attack's ringleader, and 4 others approached Mclen, who was accompanied by a friend. Smith told her perceived rival, "I got a lock," referring to the padlock she'd hidden inside a sock prior to unleashing a barrage of strikes. A melee ensued as Smith and her accomplices, identified as students at Brooklyn Academy and Bedford-Stuyvesant Preparatory, attacked Mclen. The latter's friend tried to intervene but was struck as well. Mclen was left with a deep gash on her face, which required 6 stitches to mend, and a severely bruised jaw. Her attackers had achieved their nefarious goal, as the beating had left Mclen unable to sing. The talent show was cancelled in the incident's wake. 4 of the attackers, identified as Decory Fletcher, Ashanti Garner, Brittany Williams, and Shazmaya Morrison, all of whom were reported as being in their late teens, were arrested near the scene. Smith was taken into custody a few days later and, like the others, was charged with felony assault, menacing, weapons possession, and harassment. McLaurin, who eventually recovered from her injuries, became the face of an anti-bullying campaign in the aftermath. Number 3. Ryan Stock. In 2016, audience members attending an America's Got Talent shoot were left in shock following a failed Daredevil act. Performing couple Ryan Stock and Amber Lynn Walker, who were engaged to be married at the time, attempted a stunt that involved the latter shooting a crossbow bolt at the former's head. Stock, who was also a sword swallower, pushed a pole down his throat, at the end of which there was a bullseye. He then faced Walker as she pointed a crossbow loaded with a flaming bolt at the target. The woman then pulled the trigger, but her aim was off, and instead of hitting the bullseye, the sharp needle struck Stock in the throat. Flames engulfed his neck immediately after the impact, and he began patting himself down, mistakenly believing he'd caught fire. The couple stopped the performance. Stock maintained that he was all right, but judges Simon Cowell and Howie Mandel insisted he head straight to the emergency room. The pair walked off stage, and fortunately, Stock hadn't sustained life-threatening injuries. He later told the show's presenters that he'd been the one to insist they do the stunt, even though Walker was nervous about it. Number 2. Andrei Zlenoff. On an edition of Ukraine's Got Talent in the mid-2010s, Andrei Zlenoff presented a danger act that seemed to be a mixture of martial arts and knife work. The leather-clad performer began his routine energetically, and after doing a cartwheel, pulled out a sword that had been concealed in the back of his assistant's suit. Zlenoff demonstrated his swordplay skills before his assistant removed his shirt. The man then lay with his legs in the air on broken glass shards, visibly wincing as they etched into his bare back. He then rose to his feet and turned his back to the camera, which captured several glass fragments that had become embedded in his skin. His assistant, who in the meantime had donned a nurse's outfit off stage, returned to Zlenoff and helped him prepare for his big finish. It involved the Daredevil jumping through a spinning hoop that had inward-pointing knives attached to it. As Zlenoff was getting ready to make his leap, several attendees and even a jury member were filmed clutching their faces in anticipation. Zlenoff jumped and went through the hoop, but one of the knives cut his back, while another caught his ankle, bringing the contraption down with him. The extent of the Daredevil's injuries remained unclear. He managed to get back to his feet and saluted the audience, but as he turned around, streaks of blood were seen on his back. Number 1. Tice Nielsen and Mary Wolfe. In July of 2018, acrobats Tice Nielsen and Mary Wolfe were auditioning for America's Got Talent when their trapeze act went horribly wrong. The Salt Lake City couple, performing as Duo Transcend, was executing their acrobatics high above ground. Pyrotechnics were also a part of the display, and about midway through their routine, flames erupted from each side of the bar on which they were suspended and from the floor below. The culmination of their performance involved them both hanging upside down, with Tice blindfolding himself and catching Wolfe as she slid on his body and dropped head first towards the flaming floor. Unfortunately, the woman slipped his grasp, and a collective gasp echoed through the theater as she plummeted several feet. Watching from the audience was Wolfe's mother, who was visibly distraught upon witnessing the terrifying fall, and the couple's 2-year-old son. Wolfe hit the floor, but got up moments later without having sustained major injuries, and even asked the judges if they could perform the blindfold trick again. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be poor and happy or rich and miserable? Let us know in the comments section below.